last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Dark Matters Radio. And Dark Matters is brought to you exclusively by KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And once again tonight, our producer is Ms. Chanel, and always she does one bang-up job. And our audience is one of the best on the planet. So, boy, we're glad to see you here. Now, last week, we had one bang-up show. We had two gentlemen on, Mr. Jonathan Dover and Mr. Stan Milford, both retired officers from the Navajo Rangers, a law enforcement agency that basically deals with incidents and things happening on Native American property. Well, we had such an excellent show. At the very end of it, and I'm telling you, those 2 hours, if you tuned in, those 2 hours blew past unbelievably quickly. And at the very end, we were just starting to get into some crazy stuff, and voila, the show was over. Well, Gary Kissel, my co-host, and I both asked these gentlemen, hey, we'd love to have you back very soon. As a matter of fact, what about next Monday? And thankfully, their schedules were such that once again, they are joining us. But tonight, also, I got to tell you that Mr. Mark Center, our co-host, is still not able to join us here. So, Mark, if you're tuned in, buddy, we're thinking about you. And as soon as you can, we're really looking forward to have you come back with us. Now, let's get on with the show. My co-host, Mr. Gary Kissel. And there he is. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing okay, man. It's been a fun day today, sitting out here in the sweltering heat of the studio in Springfield, Missouri.
I didn't catch you at an inopportune time, did I?
No, I'm done on the toilet.
Okay, all right. Which is good. As a matter of fact, I've got a little Sheltie dog wandering around here, still refusing to eat. He's like that. Do you remember that commercial from many years ago in the 70s? Give it to Mikey. He won't eat anything.
He won't eat anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, he's, I don't know where he's at right now, but let's get on with the show. Once again, joining us, Jonathan Dover and Mr. Stan Milford. Gentlemen, it is a distinct pleasure to have you back. Thank you once again. Gary, did you want to start with anything?
Well,
tonight?
I'm just so fascinated by this book that's going to be coming out in October, because I'm curious. Now, I know, Stan, you wrote it, but are you both in the book?
It does talk about the cases, some of the cases that John and I did collaboratively over during the years that we worked under special projects. That was about 11 years, from about 1998 through about 2010, I believe, when John retired from the department.
Well, let me ask a real quick question, Stan. When you say special projects, now
Sounds like Navajo X-Files.
Is that geared strictly toward these unprecedented cases and things that you guys ended up being involved with? Is that like skinwalkers, Sasquatch, UFOs? Is that what the moniker stood for, special projects?
Actually, special projects was a unit that John and I were in, that the biggest part of our duties and responsibilities was day-to-day law enforcement. Under the special projects, we did things like SWAT call out. John and I were SWAT team commanders, co-commanders of the department SWAT team. So we did dignitary protection. At times we were providing security for motion pictures and the actors, like Johnny Depp did the Lone Ranger, and the band Metallica did a video out there, and on and on. But John and I, our responsibility was for those things that would be deemed high profile and sensitive within the day-to-day work. And but when the chief envisioned this unit that would handle these cases that would be deemed paranormal or supernatural, it fell under that special projects unit. So John and I were, as John says, voluntold that we were going to be heading that section and responsible for those investigations. And so that's kind of how it came about. And I'll let John add some to it, because I know he has more.
Yeah, the special projects, we did a lot of dignitary protection. We were doing search and rescue, recovery of the dead, just anything, any investigations from other departments that would bring them to us, that were very high profile and needed to be kept on the QT. And so, we've basically wrote volumes of reports. I think my longest report was about 250 pages.
Whoa.
And my longest investigation lasted 10 years. So
on what?
It was that particular one was an archaeological resource theft case, where it started to branch off, and we found out this extended family was digging in 5 different states, mostly on National Park Service lands. So that resulted in a Rimmon bulletin for the Rocky Mountain Information Network. And all the officers were apprised of who they were and what they were doing. I ended up closing that case administratively just because the leads ran out.
And the family was doing this without permission, right? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah. Under 16 USC 470 EE, it's a federal violation under the Archaeological Resources Protection Act to dig or trade or in any artifacts. And they were doing this in, like I said, 5 different states.
Now, when you're talking artifacts, are you talking primarily Anastasia artifacts, things that go back a long, long, long way, or is it more recent artifacts?
These in particular were 700 to 900 year old. They probably were Anasazi. They could have been Mimbres, you know, any tribes from other areas too. I mean, these guys were digging at Mount St. Helens before it blew up. They were in the Grand Canyon. They were in different national parks. And so they seem to like to go to national parks. But it's considered a felony. First offense can land you in prison for 5 years.
You're talking about antiquity black market stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
$10,000 fine. And then it goes up from there. So
you have to remember, some of these vessels, just of this size, could be 40,000 at the time, $40,000 and up. So today, I would imagine it's probably doubled that for the same type of
small
vessel
fortune
today.
for these kinds of
Right, and there were people that really had done that all their life, and a lot of them don't feel that that these type of laws are applicable to them. They don't realize that
because
these
they feel they
are,
belong to the nation, so they should have the right to do it.
sometimes that's their view, but these belong to the tribes and the people that reside there. And the other thing is, the majority of those areas there's human remains there. That's somebody's graveyard. And they wouldn't like it if I went into Arlington National Cemetery or some other location and started digging somebody up and taking things from that. It would be no different. So,
right.
I had a question, being myself medically retired law enforcement, and of course, my race, Caucasian. I've wondered if any of those cases that you gentlemen were involved with, supernatural or paranormal, ever spilled outside of Native American lands, and you interfaced with law enforcement, either state, municipal, even federal, okay, in pursuit of these cases, and what the response was of non-native police officers. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. John, you want to jump in on that first?
Yeah, we did have cases where the counties, various counties were called out. State police were called out onto these things. City agencies were called, and they basically told the victims, "We can't help you. We don't handle those." There was no mechanism for them to handle anything like that. And as soon as if they tried to go out there, somebody gets punched in the nose, they have to drop everything, turn around, and go back, because that takes precedence for them. For us, since we were detailed to it, we were given, which I consider a luxury, the time to do complete investigations. There was a lot of curiosity by other agencies, state, tribal, and federal agencies, as to what we were doing, and a lot of times we'd have police vehicles showing up at our scenes as we were investigating, and the looky-loos just sitting there taking pictures and wanting the story right away.
Yep.
We've also talked to numerous police officers that have had encounters with, especially with skinwalkers, and they would talk to us very quietly and tell us, don't be telling anybody who I am, because they didn't want anyone to think that they were crazy. But when you have a prisoner in the back seat of a Chevy Tahoe with a cage between the driver and the suspect, and another cage blocking off the back, and they get into the station and the person is gone, and they never
Gone?
stopped. Yeah, they're gone, and they never stopped anywhere on the way. And they even had other officers come out help them search the vehicle, and the suspect was gone.
The thing you have to remember is that the cultural aspect of the agency that we fell under. We were a tribal agency. Our chief at the time he was brought up like John and I too. There's a uniqueness there. He was brought up in two worlds. He was brought up in the traditional Navajo living as a child, born there and raised there on Navajo, but he was also raised within the Mormon community up in Salt Lake City when he became school age. Well, a similar thing happened for me where my mother took me and my older sister back to Oklahoma when she separated from my father. So we left the Navajo Nation and were raised predominantly in the non-Indian culture there, which Tahlequah is the capital of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma, but a lot of the public school is predominantly anglicized, and so there isn't a big focus on tribal stuff. And I'll let John explain his.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and of all places, and I ended up.
Hey, John, do you miss it?
I like to say that I escaped, so they haven't caught me yet. So moved out this way about 1976, and as soon as I got out of high school, and I just been living out here ever since. I got married out here, got divorced out here, but when I was growing up, I spent all my summers on the reservation.
And I did too.
So yeah, so we had a lot of, the family is very close with reservation families. And so, we were taught a few things. And then when we became Rangers, for myself, I'll speak just for myself, I had to literally study and read books and talk to different people about the culture and to understand it. And it just so happened that one of my grandfathers was he had been trained to be a medicine man. And later on in his 20s, he became a Christian. And sometime after that, he became a minister. So that was basically his testimony. But he used to talk to me about the skinwalker phenomenon and what to look for and what to be careful about and things like that. They're kind of the inside track, so to speak. And so that's really helped me. Stan, on the other hand, had close family too that taught him a lot of this stuff.
Well, I gotta tell you, I've been around. I think I'm probably older than all you gentlemen, and I've had a rather now and again eventful life. After I came back from the Army after my Vietnam service, and I became a police officer, I got to tell you, one of the very first things that I encountered. Now, this was incidentally back east. This was in the state of Pennsylvania. As a matter of fact, where my hometown is, central western Pennsylvania. It was a hot spot going all the way back to the so-called French-Indian War. In 1754-55, we had settlers, Anglo settlers, of course, British, living there. They were routinely attacked by French and their Native American allies that came down from Canada. My great-great-great-great-great-grandfather had been an Irish immigrant that got over here in the 1740s. He was indentured, became he was indentured to a gunsmith. Okay. And now what they were making in those days, he learned to make rifles, which were vastly different than smoothbore muskets. And these rifles basically were the blueprint for the later so-called Kentucky rifles. They were Pennsylvania rifles, and they were insanely accurate for the times. But it took a long time to load them. That was their one drawback. But boy, oh boy, you got a sight picture on something, you could take it down. Now, the biggest surprise that I had, and this was probably 3 months after I was a sworn officer, uniform, I came across something that, quite frankly, I couldn't believe. By that time, incidentally, I had, actually several years before, an extraordinary UFO sighting in Pennsylvania. As I later discovered when I was doing some very deep research, that entire part of the country was literally being overflown by these things, whatever these things are. And not only Pennsylvania, but West Virginia. And a very famous case happened down there with a very terrifying cryptid creature. Ohio, New Jersey, New York. The whole area was just basically invaded in the skies. And I came across this news article where a woman who incidentally was married to a police officer very near where I was stationed, had literally been run off the road by a very low-flying UFO. Now, these things have been around forever. Now, I know that you gentlemen have had experiences with that, and there were some very, very weird situations that developed. For example, in Somerset County, which was a little north and, if I'm not mistaken, east of where my home was, farmers going out into their fields seeing, what can only be described as hominids running around. Not humans, not human beings, but hominid creatures. Very mysterious bird type creatures. And I'm trying to remember now some of the other things that popped out about that time. But it was like we stepped into the Disneyland of the weird, if you gentlemen know what I mean. And these things would happen, and then poof, it'd be over. It'd be gone. Now, is that what you discovered in some of your cases when you were called upon to go out and investigate some weird happenstance?
One thing, John and I developed this idea or theory that all of these things that we refer to as paranormal, supernatural, the commonality or the common thread in all of them is this idea of other dimensions or parallel planes of existence, and that these things of paranormal, whether it's a Bigfoot or UFO or even haunting related things, these things cross over from some other space into our physical world. And in the case of hauntings, things will be moved, voices will be heard, even apparitions being witnessed. And then all of a sudden, like you said, poof, it's back on the other side, and people are left wondering, where did it go? Where did it go? You know, especially like Bigfoot related things. We feel that Bigfoot isn't as some people believe, out there living in the woods like a bear or mountain lion or these kind of things, that it's actually a entity or being from other dimensions, that it is either placed here or put here for a specific purpose, and then it ends up going back across. I had mentioned a case I had done before in our last podcast, where it was a haunting case, and I began having coins apport out of thin
Okay.
air and falling in the floor. And
Mhm.
so, if you stop to ponder on that, these coins had to come from some other space. It was actually appearing out of thin air right in front of our eyes and falling in the floor. So it's a solid, tangible, metallic object that is coming from somewhere into our physical world and being manifested there. And we got to talking and thinking about this and pondering it. And maybe that's just what these UFOs and other entities are doing. They're coming from some other space into our physical atmosphere, our own physical world, and we witness these things. And so I'll let John talk a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things that we looked at was how can you collect the evidence? How can you look at this evidence and possibly introduce it into a court system? And so that was always our goal, was to collect the type of evidence that you could testify to. And one of the things, that you do as a criminal investigator is that you follow the evidence. In an accident investigation, I was a class 3 technical accident investigator in Arizona, and I was taught by one of the best reconstructionists in the state for 4 years. And what they told me was that you don't immediately talk to the witnesses, because every witness will have a slightly different take of what happened. What you do is you look at the evidence first, the evidence on the roadway. You look at your skid marks, your scuff marks, your crush damage, and all that kind of stuff. And you determine, based on the physics and the mechanical mechanisms, what happened. And then you get your witness statements and see if they fit with the evidence. This is what we did with the paranormal cases. We would investigate, we try to collect any evidence that we can, photograph it, measure it. And at the end, we would talk to the people. And we're not just, at the time, you have to understand, we're law enforcement. So we're not just saying, tell me what happened. We're looking at people, we're reading body language, we're reading micro expressions. I was trained over and over how to interrogate people, and did homicides, and got people to confess. And I went through a course, they called it the gentle art of selling prison. And
Right.
and boy, it was good. But you used a lot of these techniques, and then you ask questions like, do you use recreational drugs? Do you use, prescription medication? When was the last time you took them? What kind? Have you been drinking alcohol? When was the last drink you had? Just the whole 9 yards. And for some people, it's embarrassing. You've got a uniformed law enforcement officer asking you questions, and you're going, I just saw a UFO, how come you're asking me all this? Well, we're trying to make a determination of how valid, the person is, to be able to go into court and say, okay, I got a weak point in my case, or maybe the case is stronger because of the background stuff you did. So these were well thought out and meticulous investigations.
Well, my biggest, I guess you could say, my biggest eye opening with some of these cases that on the surface do not appear to be paranormal or supernatural. And I'm talking about missing cases, okay, missing people cases. Now, we mentioned David Paulides a week ago, okay. And I believe you gentlemen at one point, was it you, Jonathan? You had met him or spoke with him?
Yeah.
We both know him. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. I know him too. And that's material for another conversation. But be that as it may, his books, the 411 series, are genuinely troubling, even terrifying. And I got to tell you, it made me think twice because, hey, when I was a bit younger, I used to spend an inordinate amount of time in rough country. Okay. Now, not so much back east, because back east, where I'm from, I mean, there's definitely some rough country there, but nothing like I encountered when I lived in Colorado or in Idaho. There are some I used to do quite a bit of deer hunting when I lived in Idaho. And I'm talking about up in the boondocks. And I never really considered, I was usually with one or two other people. I never really considered that, other than, of course, falling down or whatever. I mean, hell, when I was in the Army, I was out in the bush in Vietnam, well, frequently. And I never really considered that. But reading those books became eye-opening. How do you gentlemen see that?
One thing is that for the longest time, I would say, going back to its foundation, you could go into any Walmart, they'd have this large billboard thing of all these missing people, and yeah, some of those cases involve family members who don't legally have the right to take children and things of that nature, but there are also a lot of people that are on that board that there's just no explanation to why they up and vanished. They one day they're doing their regular routines, going to school or going shopping or whatever their routine is, and out of the blue, their car's parked on the side of the road or whatever, and they're gone.
Yeah.
And yes, John and I, where we worked, this region of the Navajo Nation, there is a heavy influence by uh, illegal cartel. And, the human trafficking thing today has gone through the roof. It's in every major city,
Mm-hmm.
even in smaller rural areas today. Cartels has a presence there, and so yes, there is a lot of human trafficking going on, sex trafficking, and such. But there has always, like I had mentioned before, the Navajo Reservation is 27,000 square miles. That's a pretty big chunk of land that, and today at this time, when you bring this subject up, there is an issue with missing in indigenous peoples, and primarily missing in indigenous women from various reservations. They're gone, and families are desperately searching and trying to find information about that. But yeah, I'll let John talk.
Yeah, we actually have families that approach medicine men. They approach what they call crystal gazers or hand tremblers, and ask for assistance in locating missing family members. And it is a problem out here. If you can imagine the crime rate in any city and multiply that by 4 or 5 times. That's how the reservation is. And the police presence out here is so low. There's only 200 police officers handling the entire reservation, that I've seen fights that have occurred where people were able to take a used shock absorber out of the back of a truck and beat somebody to death with it and hike out and get away before the police got there, because the police response is typically anywhere from an hour or more. So even an ambulance service is about an hour to where I was living. And that's why I put myself through EMT training so that I could better help people than just stand there and hold their hands and say somebody's coming.
In the metropolitan areas, a law enforcement officer sometimes has a partner he's working with, and their backup may be at the most like 2 minutes away. John and I, where we work, at times, our backup might be an hour and a half away from us, or even 2 hours in some cases, simply because of that wide open area. John had mentioned before, like when I came on, there was about 40 Rangers within the department, commissioned law enforcement Rangers. These are Rangers that have gone through the Federal Police Academy and graduated and are fully commissioned. By the time I left, and I had served as a delegated department director or chief ranger for a little over 2 years, we were down to 8 Rangers when I actually retired from the Rangers department. So,
Well,
yeah,
last week I had mentioned that I had for several years been on an investigation for the magazine that I work with, UFO magazine, on human mutilations. And in 1993, and boy, did this cause me some heartburn, big time. I started to correlate out of my curiosity. And I had heard stories. I've heard all kinds of stories, but I heard stories about missing persons and children in connection with the overall UFO thing. Now, back in those days, I knew practically everybody you needed to know in this field, including representatives in the Department of Defense, representatives at NASA, and many other areas. And I started doing some research and statistics on yearly missing children. Okay, normally under the age of 19 or 18 years of age. And I got to tell you, I was shocked at the figures. And I correlated a lot of this, and I did a series of articles about it. And one of the weirdest aspects to this, I had been talking to a court officer back in New York, excuse me, and came across, and this was not only weird, but even kind of spooky, 2 cases where dead bodies disappeared from a morgue back there. Okay. Now, when my articles came out, it was an overwhelming thing in the field at that time that you could not really do anything or write anything, or it was frowned upon talking about anything that dealt with things like mutilations, human mutilations. Cattle were fine, okay. Horse mutilations, that was fine. But human, oh, that's something different. And the missing kids. And we were physically accosted, my wife and I were physically accosted by a very well-known figure in this UFO field at a conference. And I'm talking about screaming and carrying. At one point, I thought this guy was going to physically assault us, and I was all ready to go. But this freaked people out. Now, when I say missing kids, I was talking in the numbers of over 100,000 nationwide. Now, hey, look, I'm sure a lot of those could be explained by parents abducting them, kids getting involved in the drug trade, kids getting involved in sexual situations and disappearing. But then there were just a hell of a lot of them that just seemingly flat disappeared. Do you have any insight into any of that by chance?
Well, I do know that I have an uncle that served as a Navajo police officer, and as maybe John or even you know, during the 80s, there was an uptick in really kids listening to what is known as black metal or death metal, and these groups, these bands were tied to satanic worship and black magic related things. And during that time, you definitely had an increase of homicide, child mutilations. I remember my uncle telling me about a case where there was infants that had been skinned, and these skins were hung in a tree, and things
on
of
the
that
reservation.
nature. On the reservation, yes. And but again, that was back before I became a law enforcement officer and sworn officer. But I know that there is elements to what we've seen with the witchcraft and the shape shifting that had similarities and parallels to what was described to me during this rise in satanic activity. So, there's a lot of different phenomena that have taken hold on the reservations over the years, and so it resulted in a lot of homicides. John, you got something to add?
Oh, just mirroring what Stan was talking about. A lot of activity. For a while there in the 80s, there were satanic cults all over the place. Every Halloween, we were informed that to keep an eye out for missing infants and children, especially. And for 30 years, I sat out in my yard in a vehicle, in my unit, in full uniform, with the vehicle warmed up, ready to respond to anything that would happen, whether it was a kid that got hit while trick-or-treating or poisoning or whatever. And it's amazing now that I can actually sit at the door and hand out candy, because for a long time I didn't get any time off, or I was on call 24/7 along with Stan.
Tell me, in any of these investigations, because of some of the things that Stan and Jonathan, you were both doing and investigating. For example, the Skinwalker thing, that immediately, of course, comes to mind. Were you ever targeted and attempts made on your life?
Go ahead, John.
For me, early on, I got out of the police academy. I was in there for 6 months, and as soon as I hit the ground, I had 2 assassination attempts on me. And in both situations, there are people that would come to the door 1 or 2 in the morning saying that there's a huge fight going on, and right away you notice, well, there's 4 strapping guys that are asking you to follow them out in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, and why couldn't they handle it?
That's not obvious, is it?
Right. So in one case, I followed Captain Obvious out to a scene like that, and another police officer, an older police officer who was getting near retirement, came out, and I actually got to witness a civil rights violation because he just laid into him and told him to go home. But I had followed these guys about 45 miles out into the brush, and I've been jumped in the middle of the night, and thank God for pepper spray, because I took everybody down. But and I've been shot at quite a number of times, and the first time, they say God always watches over fools. And that's true, because a guy was shooting at me from a tree line with a 22, and you could not hear the report of the weapon that he was shooting, but I could hear the round snapping by my head. And unless you've been in combat, you don't recognize it. And I just kept hearing these things going snap, snap, snap. And they were about 300 yards away, and just kind of
22.
Yeah, with a 22, and just lobbing them at me. And thank goodness they didn't hit me or my vehicle. But when I finally did figure it out, I got in my vehicle, backed up, and got out of there. And then I went into the bush to go hunt them, but I never found them.
John and I have also been targeted by people that utilize witchcraft to, it may have involved shape-shifting or the skinwalkers or things of this nature. But we've been targeted by those too. And so today...
And you're talking about spiritual attack, right?
These were physical.
Both.
In one case, when we spoke in Oregon, we initially started speaking about the skinwalker phenomenon. So that was the very first time. The very next weekend, Stan and I both had family members that were all involved in either near intersection accidents or head-on collisions. So that was 9 family members over the next weekend. Stan almost got hit head-on by another vehicle, and I got run off the road by an 18-wheeler. So
deliberately?
Literally run off the road.
Deliberately,
yes. And when I went off the edge of the road into the shoulder, I came back up onto the road. He was already down the road, gone. And I was fishtailing. I had a Yukon, and I was fishtailing back and forth, and I relied on my pursuit driving training and skid pan training. And I kept turning into the skid and just back and forth, and then pumping the brakes and hitting the accelerator back and forth. And after a few large fishtails, I was able to get my vehicle under control. So
I don't know why, but this is reminiscent of the shit that went down with Buford T. Pusser. when he pissed off the Memphis Mafia and all that shit.
Yeah, so it was
This is really organized, what you're talking about.
yeah. I mean, nine family members and Stan and myself over one weekend. That's not coincidence anymore. And so we understood, and we started telling family that they were going to have to protect themselves somehow. They're going to have to smoke themselves, and we started doing that on a pretty regular basis, more so than before.
Well,
And I'm assuming you guys were always packing, right?
Always.
When you were talking about these miscreants, you often mentioned 22 caliber. For example, last week, that one husband and wife encounter was something that was trying to get into their corral. I believe you mentioned sheep, and the husband came out and shot this, what he thought was a wolf or coyote, in the hip with a 22. I'm surprised more people weren't better armed with something like a 30-30 Winchester 30-06. I'm talking about some serious firepower.
There are people that have those kind of firearms throughout the reservation. I think a lot of times the 22, it tends to be more readily available, right then and there.
Yeah.
And John and I served as federal firearms instructors mostly for our entire career. So looking at the role that firearms played in a lot of these cases, especially dealing with shape shifting and witchcraft and things of that nature, and having a perfectly good firearm that has always been 100% reliable, and then when it's attempted to, somebody uses that to against witchcraft or something, and it doesn't work, and then all of a sudden after the situation's over with, the firearm goes back and it's functioning like it always did. So there's things that occur that's beyond coincidence or things of that nature.
Well, I served for about a year as an assistant sniper on our SWAT team. And my particular weapon was a 5.56 millimeter in a Remington rifle. And I got to tell you, I never had any complaints with that. That would seem to, I'm trying to wrap my head around why one of these mechanical devices, I mean, we're all operating under the law of physics and mechanical mechanisms, how that could, no, I'm not doubting your word, but it just, I'm having a hard time thinking how that would be possible.
Well, like the coins that I mentioned that apported out of thin air.
Yeah.
Our physics is going to argue, oh, that's not impossible. But if you ask me or one of the other 3 or 4 investigators that witnessed that repeatedly, it's not just something that you're imagining. It's not just something that's a psychological related thing. You're actually witnessing a solid physical, metal object that is appearing out of nothingness.
Well, I'll tell you something else I just witnessed. We are literally at the top of the hour break point. So hold that thought, Stan.
Okay.
Once again, I hate to do it, but we got to take that break, and we'll be back with much more after these words. Thank you. And we are back. We survived the break, which is always a good thing. And I'll tell you guys, I have a question that I think will probably somehow filter in to all of this stuff we're talking about. But over time, and I when I sink my teeth into something, I'm like a dog that won't let go of that bone. Uh, and I came across something, and I think last week you even mentioned it at some point during the show. But something I've been extremely curious about dealing with Navajo witchcraft and so forth, something called corpse powder. Could either of you gentlemen explain exactly what this substance is and what is it purported to do?
Okay.
John?
All right. From what I've been told, and this came from a whole bunch of different sources, corpse powder is called that because they take this dried skin of a human. Most often it's preferred if it's an infant, and it's dried out and ground up. And then that along with bone that's ground up too, and various natural poisons from plants are mixed in. Some of them are decocted so that they're basically boiled down to some of their essences, and this is all mixed together and dried out and utilized to blow at somebody, and
To blow at
yeah,
them
it's
like
used
in your face, blow it in your face.
if you can imagine packing this stuff in a reed, or traditionally they would take the radius of an infant and hollow it out and carry that piece of bone with them in their bag, and they take that out and just blow it at you, and if you inhaled that, you would become sick. What we found out from 2 actual cases is that doctors at the hospital cannot figure out what this is. They don't know how to treat it. They don't know how to do anything with it. And it doesn't really show up in their diagnostics. So they don't know how to treat it. However, medicine men, when something is presented to them about this, they know exactly. And what my grandfather told me is that when you become a medicine man, you are taught all of it. In the old way, I guess you would consider them general practitioners, that you learned everything. You even learn how to do the curses, how to make the poisons, all that kind of stuff, because you had to know how to counteract this stuff. And so a medicine man would look at somebody and diagnose them and say, oh, you've been, hit with this poison powder, and this is the cure for that. In one case, he told the person, if you had been another hour, you would have died. And some people come out of it on their own, but in one case, it took 1.5 years. So it's very serious stuff. It's nothing out there is written on this stuff. It's all handed down verbally, and it's very secretive and very, very taboo.
Well, if somebody did that to me, now this I'm just off the top of my head, and I survived it. What is to keep me from coming back and collecting the bill for this, if you know what I mean?
In most cases, you don't know the identity of the skinwalker. He may know a friend of yours, and that friend, he could get some of that DNA and change into somebody that looked like them, and they could approach close to you and dust you with it. There's a whole different aspect to it that people don't know about. And so, in one case, we had a guy that had a mangy dog that showed up, and when he hit it with a 2x4, he said all this dust flew up off of it because it was covered in dust. And later on, he got sick. When he was taken to the medicine man told him that the skinwalker had used that came in the guise of that animal. And the guy said that when he hit the dog, it fell over and its bowels were loose, it peed all over the place, which is a pretty good sign that it's dead. But when he showed the wife, just a couple of minutes later, the dog was gone. So they think that that's how the poison was administered in that situation. So you don't necessarily know how they're going to do it, but it does happen.
Well, you've talked about shape shifting last week. Now, thinking from a military standpoint, it would seem to me that this would be something that special operations in the armed forces would love to be able to do during the course of their operations, if it were physically possible, to have an operative go in looking like somebody entirely else, or even a natural creature of some type. I would wonder, and I'm just, I'm kind of I'm kind of, just airbrushing here, but wouldn't you think that would be a valuable technique that would be desired by something like the Special Forces, the Navy SEALs, Green Berets, whatever?
John and I have military types at almost all of the presentations that we've done over the years. So there is most definitely an interest in information related to that. So,
yeah, but here's the kicker: the people that we've talked to about this subject that have been doing this, they told us that when you change, there's a red shift in the spectrum, and your vision becomes blurry. And then your thoughts become animalistic. You no longer think in the sense of a conjugative human. You think more like an animal. And so with this, it seems to me that the military is all about control. And if you can't control somebody, if you can't direct them as a weapon, then it's of no use, especially if this thing can turn around and kill your own people. So, I don't think they've figured out how it's done yet. And I don't think anyone's out there, giving away any secrets.
Yeah.
but
Gary,
we agree that
Well, I'm just thinking
anything
about
like
how.
that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just
Well,
going to say, there is the militarization of all of these different technologies. I mean, going back to reverse engineering UFOs and things of that nature that are definitely of a military interest. And so even these things we talk about, like the shape shifting and skinwalkers, that too would be of an interest to, for military.
Well, I just know that Don has talked to me before about how there are factions within the Department of Defense that think that much of this, including the extraterrestrial stuff, is malevolently evil, satanic,
demonic.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. there supposedly was within the Pentagon a coterie of military officers, some of them apparently very high rank, that I'm aware of. I was told this personally, that some Pentagon investigators were trying to follow down this UFO connection with the government, their investigations and what have you, and was told point blank, this individual was told point blank, well, we already know what it is. It's demonic, and we're telling you to stay completely away from it. Now, this is a heck of a good time to ask you gentlemen about Navajo legend and mythology detailing purported contact with, I believe your legends mention the star people. Is that correct? Yeah. Going back, I guess, centuries. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we have a lot of information as far as star people have, the Navajo called them holy people, and they have come to them to impart knowledge and to teach Navajos how to live. And we don't do that. We are considered the five-fingered people, is how they describe it in Navajo. And we don't listen. We don't take lessons. So the Yebiche, when you look at the internet, and if you type in Skinwalker, you will see pictures of something wearing a black hood with little white eyes, looking otherworldly. Well, these are actually Yebiches, and they are considered holy people. This would be like me putting a picture of the Pope up and saying this is Satan incarnate. So it's very, it's a put down toward Navajos. That yes, it does look otherworldly, but the Yebiche, usually in the wintertime, they do their dances, and there are 10 or 12 of them. The last one in line is always considered the clown. And the clown does everything backwards. He doesn't listen. He just does his own thing. And, everybody laughs at him. But the clown represents the five-fingered people. That's you and me. So when the gods came and told people how to live, the people don't listen. And they war with each other. They commit murder and everything else. And so most Indian tribes have some source where they're talking about star people coming to them. And we've investigated enough UFO cases that we ask them, how come you don't report this to MUFON in Arizona or New Mexico or Utah? And we're told, almost in every case, well, if we report it, a bunch of people will come up here and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and they won't come back again. And those are our gods. So we don't want people coming out here to hold vigil, so to speak.
Well, 11,600 years ago, the planet underwent a tremendous catastrophic event. And that event was basically the mass melting of the ice sheets that covered Northern Europe, North America, the rising of the oceans. No idea how many human beings perished in this event. This was a real event. This actually happened. And the disappearance of millions of giant fauna, especially here in North America, giant bison, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, short-faced cave bears. I'm talking about Pliocene animals that in many regards, thank God they're not here today, because they could make life really miserable. But that being said, almost every culture on the planet then said, as the earth began to settle down, sages showed up. Okay, humanity basically been reset to ground zero. And these sages, these holy men, these, well, call them what you will, came in to teach the art of civilization again. Okay. Do the Navajo have stories like that, where strangers, usually described as coming from across the sea, came to help these people in the aftermath of this horrible event?
In the Navajo legends and stories, these people came from the stars. They came from the sky. And so that's why they're considered star people. And what's interesting about the Navajos is that if you talk to some of the old Navajos, they have names for all the stars in Navajo. And they know of constellations that we can't see with the naked eye.
Right.
And, how did they get that knowledge? We don't know. And a lot of our history is written wrong. It's written by anthropologists who came over and looked at us and said, okay, this is who they are and this is what they do and all that stuff. And they failed to realize that there's a whole verbal history of Navajo that talks about, they knew who the Fremont were. They knew who the Anasazi were. They knew who the cliff dwellers were, the basket makers, the Pueblos. They lived with all of them. The Fremonts and the Utes called them Navajo, which means the ones who till, because they were agrarian. And so there's a lot of information that, the archaeologists, they'll say, oh, well, the Mimbres and the Anasazi, and that's it. And then everybody came out of those. But if you look at the basket maker, he has an elongated skull. The Pueblo has a Puebloan skull, it's round. If you look at Anasazi, they have a Puebloan type skull, but they were wiped out. Today we have
wiped out by whom?
They were wiped out by drought, and they were also slavers. So Chaco Canyon was considered a place to stay away from, and a lot of slaves built that complex over there. If you go over there and look at the walls, and just stand in one place and look at the different sections of walls, you'll see different types of masonry. As how they were built, because they were using slave labor to build them. And if you're a slave, you're going to build how your people build. So you see a wide variation. Now, you have this going on historically. And so the Navajos kind of stayed away from that area. And when the Anasazi were killed, they disappeared. They were gone completely. The cliff dwellers ended up becoming part of Navajo. And so the groups up in Mesa Verde and all the other cliff dwellers, there are actually clans related to the cliff dwellers today, such as...
Within the Navajo Nation.
Yeah, such as the Kia'ani, which are called Towering House Clan. There are other clans. There's a clan related to the Mojaves, because 2 Mojaves were picked up and adopted in. So they're clans that are related to the Nakai, or the Mexican people from South America. And So, the Navajos actually just took in a lot and adopted them, and they became Navajo too. And that's shown in our clan system. Um, what you said earlier about science, and I really have to comment about this before we get too far gone here.
Sure.
One of the things that we see is that science, there's a separation in our Constitution of church and state. So science has nothing to do with religion, and religion has nothing to do with science, so to speak. And they become almost polar opposites. For the Navajo, science and spirituality are hand in hand. And I think there's going to come a time, a lot of the investigations, say up at Skinwalker Ranch and other places, true investigations are finding out that there are links between science and spirituality. If you look at even the stuff from Nikola Tesla, when he was talking about the 369 numerals, and he said, if you knew how the 369 works, energy, vibration, and frequency, you could do anything. And he was so adamant about that, he would get to his work in New York City and walk around the block 3 times before he went in the building. So they're looking into that aspect. They've got frequency, they've got energy. Now they're looking for vibration in their experiments up there, and they're getting results. So,
John,
yeah, go ahead.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the, the investigation we did up on the top of the what's known as Satan Butte, and what we were seeing, with the frequencies and stuff like that, and how we would actually get a real-time reaction to certain things?
Yeah, and we'll give you some behind the scenes stuff. We had a production come out beyond Skinwalker Ranch, and we took them up to Satan Butte, which is a location where they said skinwalkers used to meet, and the local population would not go on that mesa. We were up there, hiked in about almost 2 miles, I guess, and we're on the precipice of a cliff, and it's dark. It's getting near the middle of the night. We had a windstorm come up, and as they're monitoring, they're seeing this 1.6 gigahertz frequency popping up on the computers. The wind at this point is 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts. And as we're doing an experiment, they're seeing this, and they're also seeing radiation readings that are peaking there, that are going crazy when there shouldn't be any radiation there.
Radiation.
Yeah, radiation.
Yeah, it's even, from what I understand, it's localized radiation too. It's not like it's everywhere. It's just like localized in specific spots. And with the 1.6 gigahertz, this is something that's occurring on different locations around the U.S. All of them UFO hotspots. They're finding that 1.6 gigahertz, which is for interstellar communication, for those who don't know.
Yeah, this particular location had been known in a previous investigation of having UFOs flying into the mesa, just like up at Dulce on the Jicarilla. And so we had that in the background too, with a lot of UFO activity in that area.
And I understand Dulce, they found the 1.6 gigahertz there too.
Right. So as we go along with these experiments, every time we did an experiment, the wind would start getting stronger and stronger. And pretty soon, toward the end, we were getting 60 and 70 mile an hour gusts of wind. We were literally standing there with everybody had their hands on the table so that it wouldn't blow off the cliff. And we were fighting the wind. And at about that time, we had a medicine man named Art with us, and Art and Stan hear a woman scream from down below in the canyon, about 100 feet down. And this is the area where there used to be a cave that the skinwalkers would meet in. And both of them, right away alerted. Now, my hearing's bad because I got a lot of gunfire over the years. So I didn't hear it. But I have no reason to doubt these guys. Stan's hearing is really good. So, we started saying, okay, we might have a skinwalker here.
Stan, what did it sound like?
Stan?
Just, you'd think that you get into a location like that where you have such high winds and the sound that comes with that. But at the time that both myself and Art heard the scream, it reminds me of when I was a kid growing up in Oklahoma. Me and my cousin would disappear off into the woods. There was his grandfather owned a really large ranch of several thousand acres. And me and this cousin would go out into the woods as kids. We had a motorized half track that we would use.
Oh, cool.
Throughout that ranch. I think I was probably about 11 years old. But we would be in the back country and sometimes at night, and you would hear what I was told was some type of panther, some type of cat. And it would scream in such a way.
Oh, it sounds like a woman scream.
Woman screaming. Yeah. And it'll make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. But that's similar to what it reminded me when I heard this. I actually heard it.
Do you
a couple
think
of times.
It was from the wind? Is that what you're saying?
No. We were able to hear it as maybe the wind would die down at a certain point. And that's where we heard this. I also heard it, and so did Art. When
and this is down in Dulce, you said?
No, this is
where was this?
Out on the Navajo reservation.
Okay.
And so when we were actually hiking up during the daytime, going up into that, we heard a woman's hollering and even screaming, but this was later on. This was in the middle of the night when we heard this. And
so as we're doing these experiments, and Stan and Art say, I think we got a skinwalker here, the production crew immediately perked up and they said, oh, maybe we can get one on film. And we had warned them ahead of time that if they started looking for these things, we were going to call it.
We'll pull the plug. And
we were not going to argue about it or anything else. That was just it, because this is extremely dangerous. And
we know.
So
I know pumas are notoriously misheard as a screaming woman or child. And they're mostly found around the Everglades, Florida, South Carolina. What kind of cat would have done that if you think it was a cat?
Or do you think I don't think it was a cat.
More paranormal. You think it was paranormal?
I think I almost know it was paranormal because I heard a woman's voice earlier in the day, like I said, as we were hiking up into the top of Satan Butte during the daytime. During the daytime, we also heard that, and we heard a scream.
Yeah, cats won't make that noise during the day.
No.
Right. So here's the thing. When we got to that point, and the wind is 70 miles an hour, it's blowing like crazy. We're trying to hold the table down.
Where's this wind coming from? Because that just doesn't happen where it just comes out of nowhere.
It was coming out of nowhere. And it was dark. And
it was severe.
It was definitely out of nowhere. Okay.
So icy cold.
At this point, and this is all on film, right?
This is crazy, dude.
Yeah, well, it was.
And I told the people there, the production team, I says, that's it. We're calling it. As soon as they agreed, they said, okay, yeah, okay.
It
that's
stopped.
The wind stopped just like that. And
like flipping a switch.
Yeah, it was just like you flipped a light switch.
That's crazy, man.
And after that, it was almost dead calm. And everybody started scrambling and grabbing equipment and packing it up. And everybody wanted out of there. I mean, you're talking about a 10 or 15 degree weather with the wind blowing. The
wind chill was crazy.
It was bad.
So
we were frozen. And we started packing stuff out. They're dragging. We got 15, 20 people up there dragging equipment down the trail. And some of them, they just said, we can't drag it. We're just going to leave it here. They left equipment up there.
So you would say they're definitely kind of in a panic after that.
Yeah, they were wanting to get out of there.
I've dealt over the years with a hell of a lot of production people, and I'll tell you, with the possible exception of maybe once or twice, most of them are clueless.
Well, we told them, Art told them, he says, just leave it on the trail, just leave it there. And they said, well, won't somebody come up and steal it? And he actually started laughing. He says, no. He says,
no.
He said, nobody comes up here. He says, your equipment's safe. And sure enough, they went back there the next day and hiked back in there, and all the equipment was still right where they left it.
Some places your stuff is safe.
Well, now here's something, and this goes back to the early to almost mid 1990s, when the first rumblings started popping up about now today known as the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. One of the primary people that basically brought this to light was television journalist George Knapp. Now, I've known Knapp from KLAS Channel 8. He was down in Las Vegas. I've known him, since as long as I've been in this field. And when he and Colin Kellner wrote their book about the Skinwalker Ranch, my wife, Vicki, and I drove over to Vegas. We had dinner with Knapp in Vegas. And we talked a lot about this stuff. Now, I did everything I could do to get permission to go out there for a few days. Robert Bigelow at the time, the aerospace billionaire and hotel guy, would never allow it. Now, why? I don't know. I've been around in this field. My name is pretty well known. And I wanted to go over there. I had some equipment I wanted to take over. Some of the stories Knapp told me were, breathtaking to say the least. And some of it, I got to be honest, I thought, how in the hell could that be possible? This is something I've got to witness myself. But I never got the chance to go over there. Now, with that being said, I got to say in hindsight, I'm kind of happy because I knew a number of people associated with that case. And I was talking to a few of them over a period of time. And they told me that they had wished they never went there because whatever it was, something followed them back to their homes.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard this 2 or 3 times. So I said, hell, I'm gonna see what I can do to verify this. So I called George Knapp. I called him up. And I said, George, I'm kind of looking at this. So I'm just going to ask you point blank. There's no avarice or anything else with me. I cut straight to the point. Did anything follow you home? And he got very quiet. He got very quiet. And then he said, yeah, but he wouldn't go any further. Okay. He wouldn't go any further. So
there have been a number of people that have been up at that location that in the end had attachments of different types of activity and phenomenon that, for the lack of really of a better way of describing it, followed them home, that made that attachment, I guess, while they were there. And then, I experienced the same thing in one of the haunting investigations I did.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask both of you guys,
Yeah.
if you ever took anything home with you after an investigation.
Yeah, several times for me. Things.
What do you do about it? Seek a shaman or?
Well, John and I do have our resources today, medicine men and shaman that are capable of dealing with those kind of phenomena and either countering it or reversing it. Basically, as what is described in things like karma, reversing those energies back to the original source. And we've experienced that, and even today I still on occasion experience the phenomenon from that original investigation where I had the coins porting. It still happens to me on occasion, out of the blue. I won't be thinking about anything related to paranormal or anything related to hauntings or any of that, and a coin will manifest and apport out of, and it can happen anywhere. I mean, John and I have had it happen in California, in Nevada, overseas in the UK, and it can happen anywhere out of the blue.
Well, silver and gold are preferred. Okay. Forget copper pennies and nickels.
Yeah.
How about some $20 gold pieces?
Unless it's one of those $100,000 pennies, then that would be fine too. But no, it does happen, and these attachments can occur. And so John and I have learned how to deal with those kind of things over the years. We have developed methods and procedures to protect ourselves and to cleanse ourselves and things of that nature. I'll let John maybe describe a little bit. We often get asked, what can I do to protect myself, and things of that nature from the perspective of Native Americans. So
I was actually asked at a conference at Alien Con. A young lady stood up and says, what can I do? Should I start smudging? And my answer to her was, don't just copy what's on the internet, what you see, what Native Americans do. Go into your history of your people and find
your
out
own culture.
Your own culture, and find out what they used to do something similar to protect themselves.
I'm Irish, so all we did was drink.
And then
actually the Roman Catholics, you'll see them swinging the urn.
I'm Roman Catholic, so I know what you're talking about, the incense.
So it's almost very similar.
Every culture has some methods that they used to keep evil away from them, and it has a more profound effect if you're using something from your own personal background, and then just
Sage is really popular here in the U.S. with people who go into houses and they want to shoo away any spirits in there, and they burn sage. And my only comment to that is, of course they left, because that shit stinks. I hate the smell of burnt sage. It's so gross. It's like
Actually, believe it or not, sage, sweetgrass, cedar, they have an antimicrobial effect.
They do. I do know about
And-
that.
And so we use them all the time.
And negative ions.
And they produce negative ions, which are always good for you.
I have to ask you a question, Jonathan. I keep seeing flashes of light on your screen, and either you've got cars driving by or you have crystals hanging out in your yard.
No, I've got a birdhouse in the
Is
front
that what it
yard,
is?
and
Because I
it's
keep
windy.
seeing flashes of light. I thought, is that a storm? What is going on?
Yeah, it's a bird feeder. Either that or it's paparazzi. Just at my window with all the flash bulbs going off.
It's really windy in this region today.
Yeah, I'd rather be fishing, but it's a little difficult to fish with a fly rod in the wind.
Is that your favorite kind of fishing? Is fly fishing?
Oh yeah, yeah. I tie my own.
That was
flies.
my dad's too. He tried to teach me, and I snagged him. I was whipping it, and I snagged him in the ear right behind me.
Ouch!
And he got it out. He wasn't mad. He says, "We're done today."
We're done.
I learned no fly fishing after that.
One thing that I should mention too is that the cases that we talk about, they were assigned. We did not go out there and investigate on our own. We don't go chasing any of this stuff on our own. We're not like, let's go to see a haunted house somewhere. We don't do that. These were assigned cases, and there are.
How did the tribal court handle anything with a supernatural?
Well, we investigated it as if we were going to take it to court, but you know,
of course,
yeah, but none of them went to court.
Okay,
witchcraft
so you never
was actually on the books going way back. It was actually in the law. I think today, that's changed somewhat.
Yeah, up to I think 1993.
And you're talking about what kind of witchcraft? Like
Navajo
Eastern
witchcraft.
European?
Navajo
witchcraft. Gotcha. Which involves the black arts, as I recall, right?
Yeah, in back in the 90s and before, they were actually listed as one of the 7 major crimes for Indian reservations.
Because that included live sacrifices, all the way down to human and infants, infants.
And then later on, that was taken out in the 90s. So
is this still a problem today? A big problem, do you think?
Oh, it is.
It is. It's a huge problem. And
how do you weed these guys out?
Sometimes community members. In 1977, 2 men knocked on a door of a hogan, which is a traditional Navajo dwelling. When the person opened the door, he got an axe in the head, and they basically chopped his head off and killed him. And these 2 guys were arrested, and they were taken to federal court. And during the federal court trial, they testified that they were picked by the community to go do this deed. And if it hadn't been them, it would have been 2 other guys that got picked. And they were out to get rid of a witch that had been plaguing the community at that time. And their cultural defense was so well thought out and so good that they were both acquitted. This was in 1977. So we do have stuff on there in the court system of people that have done things like that or were accused of being witches. And all the way back to the 1800s, 1868, when the tribe was allowed back from Bosque Redondo, and there was a roundup for 10 years of about 40 different witches that were killed in a purge, so to speak.
Now, are they all accused of practicing black magic, or is there any of these witches that may have been adept at so-called white magic, like Wicca?
There are no good witches on
Okay,
Navajo.
all right.
When you're talking about Navajo witchcraft, it's all evil. However, you do have, in some cases, and I've seen it, where you have medicine men that'll go out and do curses and bury talismans on people's property, and then they'll put out a shingle and say, well, I can cure that for you. It would be like me going out and giving you a disease and then coming along with the cure. And very unethical. And, but I've seen it happen. So, it's, you have those, you have kids that are just learning how to do the shape shifting by itself. You have,
you were talking about that last week with the using the powder again.
You have
the human powder
into the botanicals and how to make different potions and stuff. And you have one that they call frenzy witchcraft, which is the ones that are really, this is a full-time thing. And they're known to dig up dead bodies and take the jewelry and sell it in the border towns. So Navajos that suddenly come into a lot of money are often looked at with a side-eyed, that there might be something going on there. And then there, of course, like I said, there's medicine men that go wrong. So there's a whole range or levels, but none of them are good. They're, unfortunately. And like I said, we live in a world of science and we live in a world of spirit. And that's what's different.
Have either of you gentlemen ever gone to the Utah Skinwalker Ranch area?
Oh yeah, John and I have been up there.
You have?
John more times than I have been, but yeah, we both have.
What is your take on it? Is that genuinely a so-called hotspot for paranormal happenings? Because I'll tell you, I've heard over the years, I've heard issues on both sides that there is a contingent of people that believe that is genuinely a hotspot for some very unusual, strange things. And then on the other side, Bigelow had an organization there that he put together called NIDS, the National Investigative Discovery, I think it was. And they never released, or Bigelow never released any data that they allegedly collected. So there's a lot of people that think the whole thing was a hoax. So what do you guys think?
John, can you elaborate on the 22 million and like when we got help from Bigelow?
Yeah, we had actually worked with some of Bigelow's investigators, and they were all special ops people that had been brought in to do these investigations. So we got to know a couple of them pretty well. And what we found out was that, they did an investigation up there. Now, you have to remember that they were basically contractors.
Yeah.
And so being contractors, they don't fall under the Freedom of Information Act. Right. Now, when the government wants to do stuff and keep it on the low down, they hire contractors because then they become kind of like a black budget item. Later on, they had this big thing that came out several years ago about the ATIP, the Aerial Threat Identification Program. And there was $22 to $24 million that was sent to this organization. Bigelow got quite a bit of that money to do this investigations with NIDS. When they left, it was said that their statement was that this thing, whatever it is on the ranch, is demonic. Now, we had been asked, what would we do differently that they do? And one of the things that I see in the approach is that you hear them often say, let's go poke it with a stick, and that's just like humans.
That's dumbass little white cracker way of doing things.
You go up there and you poke it with a stick, you throw a rock at it. This is just how we are as people. But for me and Stan, when we approach something like this, any investigation, we do not have a preconceived idea of what we're going into. We don't go, oh, we're going to see this, we're going to see that. We just go in with an open mind, with the idea of let's see what evidence there is, and start collecting that evidence. And whatever, just follow the evidence until you make your conclusion. And in some cases, that conclusion came out completely different. We had, I'll tell you a story, and I'll let Stan tell a story.
Just to give you a heads up, we are about 3 minutes before the end of the show, believe it or not.
Again, we've gone through 2 hours.
Well, real quick, we had a woman that said skinwalkers were attacking her. We tracked the scene. We found 7 sets of footprints. We followed them, saw where they had all gathered on a trail. She had inherited a hogan, and the hogan was no door on it, no windows. She had moved in and started having these things happen. We determined that there were local drunks in the city on a border town that were using her place as a crash pad. Stan had a case where somebody reported UFOs rising up through the trees and flashing. And he took a compass and shot an azimuth and was able to determine that there was a town behind the next ridge line. And what they were seeing was a temperature inversion of lights from the town coming up through the trees. And when the wind blows, it looks like they're blinking. So
yeah, you run into situations that are, proven to be not supernatural, but you've also equally run into situations that could be nothing but supernatural.
That's right.
True.
And I like that.
We don't
I appreciate that. You guys do that.
What we do is based in investigation techniques. It's not about belief or having faith, in what is being said. It's not based like that. We don't follow that idea of belief. When you go into this, you're as an investigator, you're collecting evidence, you're documenting all of these different evidence and phenomena.
Amen. From your lips to God's ears. Yeah.
Well, we sure enjoyed the time with you.
Yeah,
it was great having you guys, and love to have you back after the book comes out in October.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm sure, guys, it's going to be a fascinating read. But let me thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come here, not only last week, but this week. This has been thoroughly enjoyable, enlightening, and very informative. I wish you guys the very best. It's just simply been a pleasure.
Thank you, and thank you to your audience.
Me too.
Yeah,
I loved meeting you guys.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
Okay, we got 20 seconds. So with that being said, hey, Thursday evenings on KGRAdb at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 Eastern, UAP Crossfire. This week, because we couldn't do it last week, we're going to be taking a look at Dr. James E. McDonald. And if you're not familiar with that gentleman, let me tell you what, this is one hell of a story. That's it for tonight, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you again next Monday. Good night.
Cubs win.
See you guys.
Bye.